got more technical, I found that I really liked other aspects of it, like the equipment, the gear.
This ain't no debate thing, you know. First woman to break 328 days straight in space. You know, I figured I see flat earthers been scared lately since the Christina Koch thing came up, but I ain't gonna let it go. I want your boys and girls to see real science for yourself and start believing in what you see, at least. Here we go. Low Earth space. Christina Koch.
The physics of the system that you have to use, and also the partnership aspect of it. It's really like a team, because when you get into some of the higher levels of climbing and different types of more technical climbing, you really rely on your climbing partner. We train for spacewalks in a giant pool that's called the NBL, which stands for Neutral Buoyancy Lab. And it's a pool that's large enough to fit a full-scale mock-up of the International Space Station. So in that, we simulate everything like we would on a real EVA, including egressing out of the airlock, your safety tethers, and your local tethers that you would work when you're at a work site performing the job. So all of that is just very similar to the concepts of rock climbing. So during my astronaut interview, the most memorable question that I had from the interview committee came from Peggy Whitson, who, as you know, is a famous astronaut for having the longest time in space. She's done many, many spacewalks. She's a hero of mine. And she looked at me and she said, "When you rock climb, have you ever been scared?" And I felt like she was seeing right to my soul when she asked that question. And I feel like the answer to that question was absolutely, I have been scared. And that's when I really kind of found the fact that turning fear that you might be having into focus is so important. And I think that's what she was drawing on when she asked that question. So that was a pretty profound moment in my selection process. I'm Christina Koch, and I'm an astronaut.
Onboard power. Launch command issued for ignition.
Launch command has been issued. Second umbilical tower separated. Booster ignition.
Engine turbo pumps at flight speed. Engines at maximum thrust. Lift off.
And lift off. We have liftoff of Nick Hague, Christina Koch, and Alexei Ovchinin, now on their way to the International Space Station.
10 seconds, the parameters are nominal. This is Verlox 1, everything's nominal.
Good first stage performance so far. The Soyuz delivering 930,000 pounds of thrust from its 4 boosters and single engine. The first stage of the Soyuz measures 68 feet in length, 24 feet in diameter, burning liquid fuel for the first 2 minutes, 6 seconds of the flight.
Everything is nominal on board. The crew is feeling great. Seconds, the vehicle is stable. Copy all. This is Verlox 1. Everything is nominal on board. The crew is feeling very well. Control system parameters are nominal. Copy all.
Screen a little bit bigger.
Everything is nominal on board. The crew is feeling well.
Good call that the escape tower has been jettisoned.
Without a doubt, my most memorable day was day one.
With the assistance of Space Station Commander Oleg Kononenko, Christina Koch of NASA, the first one through the hatch, being greeted.
That was the day that I have seared in my memory. Visions when I first arrived here, opening the hatch, seeing some of my best friends on the other side, floating through, seeing my first glimpses of the actual interior of the space station after having traveled here for 6 hours on a small Soyuz spacecraft, that it actually exists for the betterment of humanity, doing science and exploring, that it was real and that I got to live here. I'm very privileged to have that as one of my favorite memories. One time as a crew, all 6 of us were together, and one thing we enjoy doing is singing karaoke, believe it or not. And we were belting out one of our favorite karaoke songs, Winds of Change. And as you know, we have the internet here supplied by a K.Z.U.P band antenna, which has passes where sometimes it has to reset and we'll lose that internet. So we're belting out Winds of Change, and all of a sudden the feed dies. And we go on and we're talking for a little while, maybe 10 minutes or so go by. And then suddenly the K.Z.U.P band antenna picks back up the satellite, and Winds of Change, our karaoke video, starts really loud in the speakers again. And without missing a beat, conversation instantly stops, and we all just resume singing immediately. And that was a really, really great moment. I'd have to say any meal that we share together is a great one. And of those, some of my favorites, I would say, would be our pizza nights. Our folks on the ground send up care packages sometimes, and they'll put together a little non-perishable pizza kit. And we're able to actually make pizzas in our kind of makeshift space oven using tinfoil and a little bit of creativity, and seeing what everybody comes up with and sharing with each other, and just something a little different, a little bit out of the norm that we actually feel like we get to prepare ourselves as opposed to just opening up out of a packet. It's really special and it's a lot of fun. One really striking moment was the first time I saw my hometown in the area where I grew up, which is coastal North Carolina, and seeing those Outer Banks come into focus around the horizon and suddenly realizing what I was looking at was a just breathtaking moment. Some of the other favorite things I have to look at would be definitely the auroras, the northern lights and the southern lights. And those are really special to me because I spent so many years working in the Antarctic and the Arctic and seeing those auroras from below. And so to see them on a planetary scale from above is just truly mind-blowing. You know, just like those memories of day one, there are a couple flashes that I'll just never, ever forget. For example, my very first spacewalk with Nick was obviously incredibly memorable just because it was the first time I ever had experienced that. And there was one moment where, despite how focused I was on doing everything right and having it be my first time out, I looked across and I saw Nick working, and behind him I saw the Earth gliding by, and it was clearer than I had ever seen it out of any window on station. I had only been on board for about 2 weeks, and at that moment I just felt like everything I had ever worked for, everything I had ever loved, everything I had ever wanted to contribute to in my entire life was just culminating in that moment, and recognizing that it was real. There was my friend who I've been training with for 6 years right there with me. That was a moment I'll definitely never forget. Going out the door with Drew Morgan twice on both spacewalks was awesome. That particular spacewalk series that we did had some unknowns that couldn't be simulated in our spacewalk training facility. And so we were really discovering as we went how the series was going to unfold and if all the things that we had planned were really going to work. So that was really exciting too. And then Spacewalk with Jessica Meir was just an unbelievable honor. And there were times when we looked at each other, for example, right when we came out the hatch, we caught each other's eye, and we knew that we really were honored with this opportunity to inspire so many. And just hearing our voices talk to Mission Control and knowing that 2 female voices had never been on the loop, solving those problems together outside, was a really special feeling. In the beginning, the surprise was just that this place actually existed. But more recently, the surprise that I've uncovered is the human body and mind's ability to adapt to any situation. For example, I sometimes joke that before Jessica got here and before I, heard her all the time exclaiming about how exciting and fun it was to float, I think I had actually forgotten that I was floating. The human mind just has an ability to really accommodate any situation and to turn it into normal. So, for example, the fact that we can just work right on the ceiling like this and not even know the difference between the two, it's really been an exciting and a huge surprise to see that life up here can actually become normal because of what our bodies can adapt to. I'd say the most memorable item I've ever received would be handwritten letters from my husband. No matter what, things that people send up and take the time to make me or write me, physical things that I can hold mean the world. I've gotten 2 handwritten letters from my husband, and they're always from months before. So, for example, I got one in October that he wrote in July because of the due dates of our items. So the letters aren't necessarily relevant to the moment, but the fact that, you know, they can express things and that it's something that someone you love on earth actually was holding in their hands is really special.
Soyuz MS-13 continuing to make its way down. Just a few more minutes, scheduled to touch down in 2 minutes, actually, 3:12 a.m. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of video back. There it is. Inside, Christina Koch, Luca Parmitano, and Alexander Sportsov.
Copy all.
Again, one of the last things to happen here will be the firing of the soft landing engines. That'll happen just a couple of seconds before the actual touchdown, when it's about 39 feet above the earth. That's 6 solid propellant engines that are intended to soften the blow of landing just a little bit.
Altitude.
Soyuz also has seat shock absorbers that will be turned on by now, prepared for that landing. And the seats themselves are contoured to fit the astronauts individually to provide them the softest possible landing, although all reports are that it still is not quite soft.
Landing site.
You can see one of the helicopters that's been sent in to meet the Soyuz there in that view as well. And it looks like Soyuz MS-13 carrying Christina Koch, Luca Parmitano, and Alexander Sportsov has touched down 3:12 a.m. Central Time, right on time. And now, after 328 days in space and 139 million miles for Christina Koch, and 201 days in space, 85 million miles for Luca Parmitano and Alexander Sportsov, the Expedition 61 crew is officially home. Again, that landing came right at 3:12 a.m. Central Time, 3:12 p.m. Kazakhstan time, following the deorbit burn that set it on its way at 2:18 a.m. Central Time.
Schwarzkopf is out of the spacecraft. He will be helped down the slide. That's part of his ladder apparatus at the top hatch of the Soyuz. He's waving, smiling broadly, thumbs up, and he is now back on terra firma.
And we are seeing that live now, Rob. Thanks so much for keeping us informed while we waited. We got it just in time to see his smiles and thumbs up.
Very good. We'll hang here with you, Brandy, and provide any additional details that we might be able to do. I'm going to try to reposition myself so I can get a better view of Christina Koch when she comes out of the Soyuz.
Alexander Sportsov certainly looks like he's glad to be home, pumping his fist into the air, shaking hands, lots of well-wishers on hand. Once again, on this mission, Alexander Skvortsov racked up 201 days in space, but he's adding that to what he totaled on previous space, two previous space flights now to come up with 546 days in total that he has spent in space over those 3 space flights.
And Brandy, if I might interrupt, Christina Koch, your record holder, she is out, thumbs up, and a huge smile.
Yes, we are seeing it real time. She definitely looks glad to be home. Again, 328 days that she's spent in space since her launch on March 14th.
Cook now is going down the slide, Brandy, and she'll be brought to her chair.
Yes.
All
So,
smiles
I don't
and
know
like
how
she's doing great.
things could possibly
Yes, we
be
can
fake.
still hear you, Rob.
Okay, I'm going to make my way over to Christina.
Totally real.
Christina, welcome home.
Current record holder for longest single space flight by a woman of any nationality, and seventh most space flight time accumulated by an American astronaut.
Randy, they just scooted her chair just a few feet back from where it was to give the group of photographers and television cameras here a little bit more room to position themselves. She's now donned sunglasses, as undoubtedly you can see, and we're awaiting the extraction of Luca Parmitano, who has spent more days in space than any other European Space Agency astronaut.
We're standing by for that. We're still at the moment seeing a view of Alexander Skvortsov, still looking like he is feeling pretty good and happy to be home. Still giving thumbs up.
Okay, I'm gonna switch it up real quick. Just show the scene of the live landing, and just to show that this shit ain't fake. Sometimes I think how much more can we show? Need it? What to tell them? Show them the live landing.
3:12 a.m. Central Time today. Preparations have been going on since they undocked from the International Space Station at 11:50, and they are now heading towards a 2:18 a.m. Central Time deorbit burn to get ready for that landing, which will bring them home just southeast of Zhezkazgan, Kazakhstan, wrapping up a record-setting mission. This will be the last orbit of the Earth for the Expedition 61 crew members on board the Soyuz. For ESA's Luca Parmitano and Roscosmos's Alexander Skvortsov, who launched in this Soyuz on July 20th, this will be their 3,216th orbit. But for NASA's Christina Koch, who arrived on the space station on March 14th, she'll land today, having orbited the Earth 5,248 times and traveled 139 million miles, enough to have journeyed to the moon and back 291 times. You can see some of the additional accomplishments she racked up on her mission here. Again, 139 million miles traveled, in addition to, of course, setting records for the most time in space on a single space flight for a female, 7th all-time record for a U.S. astronaut on the endurance list, and 50th on the all-time for all astronauts. 328 days is enough time to get a lot done. So next we're going to take a look back at some of Christina Koch's memorable moments.
Without a doubt, my most memorable day was day one.
With the assistance of Space Station Commander Oleg Kononenko, Christina Koch of NASA, the first one through the hatch, being greeted by her.
That was the day that I have seared in my memory. Visions when I first arrived here, opening the hatch, seeing some of my best friends on the other side, floating through, seeing my first glimpses of the actual interior of the space station after having traveled here for 6 hours on a small Soyuz spacecraft, that it actually exists for the betterment of humanity, doing science and exploring, that it was real and that I got to live here. I'm very privileged to have that as one of my favorite memories. The surprise that I've uncovered is the human body and mind's ability to adapt to any situation. I sometimes joke that before Jessica got here and before I, heard her all the time exclaiming about how exciting and fun it was to float, I think I had actually forgotten that I was floating. The human mind just has an ability to really accommodate any situation and to turn it into normal. So, for example, the fact that we can just work right on the ceiling like this and not even know the difference between the two. So it's really been an exciting and a huge surprise to see that life up here can actually become normal. I'd have to say any meal that we share together is a great one. And of those, some of my favorites, I would say, would be our pizza nights. Our folks on the ground send up care packages sometimes, and they'll put together a little non-perishable pizza kit. And we're able to...
Okay, yeah, I wouldn't do that already. Yeah, I was just fucking around on the earth side, man. Update all this shit that really do happen. I'm just play this first. I shut this joker down. I was just fucking around for a good hour. Outside of the box. Real, just outside of the box. Spaceship.
The idea that when the planet passed in front of its star, some of the
I was gonna throw a little extra bonus clip on there, but I just wanted motherfuckers to see that Christina Koch did it. Motherfuckers still doing it. Space is very real, just like low Earth. Alright, this shit being silly, so let me shut this motherfucker down. I just want to put a thing up there to Christina Koch, man. Fuck it. Go ahead. Go ahead and shut this shit down. Will I get a good hour? Oh, I didn't get a good half an hour. Let me see. I might want to just go a little bit longer. Shit, play right. Let me pause it and play it off.
light from the star would pass through.
Alright, yep, having some little technical difficulties. So I guess just gonna show that little clip and I'm out.